You know, when you think about building software, it's kind of like building a skyscraper. You can't just hope it doesn't collapse, right? You have to test every single brick, every beam. Well, today we're diving into exactly that, unit testing. It's the secret sauce to building software that actually works, one tiny piece at a time.
So here's a huge question that every single development team has to ask themselves. I mean, think about it. Before a product ever even hits an assembly line, you have to know that every little nut and bolt is perfect. The same exact idea is at the heart of building solid software.
Because, let's be real, complex software doesn't just appear out of nowhere in some big bang moment. Nope. It's built up, piece by tiny, intricate piece, almost like a giant digital Lego set. And that, right there, is the million-dollar question. I mean, you'd never build a whole car and then decide to check if the engine works. That's crazy. You test each part along the way. So, how do we do that in the world of code?
Well, the answer is a process called unit testing. And this is where quality starts, not at the end of the line, but right at the source, with the person writing the code.
Okay, so what does that actually mean? The really crucial idea here is isolation. We're not testing the whole app. We're putting the smallest possible piece of code, like a single function or a method, under a microscope all by itself to make sure it does the one thing it's supposed to do and does it perfectly.
And here's a super important detail. This isn't a job for someone else down the line. The developer who actually writes the code is the same person who writes the test for it. It's just part of the job of building something right.
So you might be wondering, why go through all this trouble? Well, because when it comes to fighting bugs, unit testing isn't just a nice to have. It's your first and, honestly, your most important line of defense.
Just think of it like a security checkpoint on an assembly line. Before any new part is allowed to join the main product, it has to pass its own individual inspection. This one simple step stops faulty pieces from messing up the entire system.
And the payoff here is huge. You catch bugs when they're small and cheap to fix, literally moments after the code is written. It's the difference between finding a faulty wire before you put the drywall up versus having to tear the whole wall down later. And funnily enough, this actually makes development go faster because you're not spending ages on painful bug hunts later on.
Okay, that's all the theory. But what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's get practical and walk through a couple of examples. All right, let's take a login screen. We all use them every day. A developer doesn't test the whole thing at once. No way. They write a tiny test just for the username field, then another one just for the password rules, and another one to make sure the right error message pops up. Each little piece gets its own checkup.
Or how about an online store? You better believe there's a unit test just for the little function that calculates a price, and another one for applying a coupon code, and a whole separate test to make sure that Add to Cart button actually, adds to the cart. Every single function is tested all by itself.
And this car analogy really just nails it. You wouldn't build a whole car and only then see if the spark plugs work. You test the spark plugs, you test the pistons, you test the radiator, all on their own. Because if every single part is perfect, you've got a much, much better chance that the whole car will actually run. That, right there, is unit testing.
Now, because this idea is so important, you can bet it's going to come up in technical interviews. So if that's on your radar, here are the absolute must-knows to help you ace it.
First off, you gotta know the tools. Developers aren't doing this stuff by hand. They use special frameworks to automate all these tests. So depending on the programming language, you're gonna hear names like JUnit for Java, NUnit for .NET, or Jest for JavaScript. These are the tools that do the heavy lifting.
All right, let's do a little lightning round here. First question they'll hit you with: who does unit testing?
Easy. The answer is short and sweet. Developers. The person writing the code is responsible for testing the code. It's part of the job. Okay, next up. When does this happen? Where in the grand scheme of a project does unit testing fit?
It happens right in the thick of it, during the coding phase. It is the very first level of testing, and it happens before all those little units are put together for the next stage, which is called integration testing. So, to wrap up this interview prep, here's your cheat sheet. What's the main goal? To make sure every little piece of code works right. What are some tools? JUnit, NUnit, Jest. You get these down, and you're golden.
All right, let's pull it all together. What do you need to remember? Unit testing is the first line of defense. It's done by developers on the smallest bits of code, and its whole mission in life is to catch bugs early, save a ton of time, and build a rock-solid foundation for great software.
And that leaves us with one last question to chew on.
If you test every single part of that car and every single one works perfectly on its own, does that guarantee the car will drive? What happens when all those perfect pieces have to start working together? That's a story for another time.